Heyo, you're listening to Edge Coach Quip, featuring our very own Edge coaches and community, dropping knowledge nuggets to fuel your day. Welcome to episode 93 of Coach Quip. I'm Coach Robyn.
And I'm Coach Chris.
And today,
we are talking about strength training during your endurance training cycle. Whether you're training for a marathon or an Ironman or anything else that requires endurance, how do you strength train? Should you strength train? When do you strength train?
does strength training make you bulk up?
That's what we're talking about today.
But first, let's talk about why we would do it in the first place. This is the thing I have to tell myself as well, because I love cardio. If you give me 30 minutes, I am going to go and run. However, I know I need to strength train. Why is that? When we're talking about any cardio exercise, whether that's swimming, biking, running, even things like tennis, hockey, our cardiopulmonary system, so our heart and our lungs, actually adapt at a much faster rate than our musculoskeletal system. So in other words, we can go out for a 3-mile run and feel amazing, but our bones and our tendons and our ligaments and our muscles have not yet made the proper adaptations to sustain that load. That's how swimmers get shoulder issues and tennis players get elbow issues and runners get all types of issues for that very reason. Now, when it comes to running, unfortunately, it really pertains to all endurance stuff, but specific to running, it is the most bombastic of all cardio efforts. You're using all 4 planes of movement and you're landing on a single leg with 2 to 3 times your body weight. Yet your heart rate is the highest out of any cardio. So the gap between your cardiopulmonary, your heart and your lungs, and your musculoskeletal, your body, is the biggest. How do we close that gap?
Strength training.
Strength training. By putting muscle on your frame, by teaching your bones and your tendons and your ligaments to sustain a load, we're in effect creating a bridge between those 2 gaps and systems. And that is the reason we strength train.
Yeah, so I've seen so many people get injured in the early part of their season for 2 reasons, right? We will soon talk about increasing your mileage too quickly, but also that gap that you're talking about, you can see where the muscle or where the issues pop up for athletes is exactly what you're talking about. It's the knee issues or the ankle issues. It's usually joint related, like you said, and strength training is a great way to bridge that gap.
And as I always say, it's not rocket science. You just have to do it.
You just have to do it. So we are going to talk about how to do it, when to do it, what you should do in our bonus miles.
A quick story before we start all on the bonus miles track is about 4.5 years ago, we decided to really increase our strength training here at Edge, and we were running a lot of challenges. So it's like, whoa, our classes were filling. Let's create a bigger space. We created the annex. Every year after marathon training, we run a survey. Not that we only train for marathons here, but it is our biggest sample size because it's the biggest of in the city every year. Mm-hmm. And on average, people had always done about 2 times of recovery a week, 1.8 sessions a week of recovery. So it's 30 to 60 minutes at a session. And they'd done just under 1 time a week strength, right? Mm-hmm. When we increased our space, increased our classes, increased our offerings, which you can always find at edgeathlete.me/classes, that went up to 2 times a week. And we'll talk about the duration of that in a second. The recovery stayed the same. Our frequency of lifting went to just under 2 times a week. Our PR rate went from 87 to 93% in that year. That was the only metric that changed with strength training, and our injuries were reduced by almost 30%. So you tell me the lever that actually got pulled that really made those change was, in effect, strength training.
My mouth is gaping open. That is an incredible statistic and great. Like that, if that's the only thing that changed for people, I mean, it's clear.
Yeah.
Strength training is where it's at.
Ta-da! Here we are in Coach Quip.
All right, so we're going to talk about how to, when to, and what to do for strength training coming up in our bonus miles.
All right, we usually get some initial questions of like, will it hurt me? Am I going to bulk up? Our big lesson from this is you got to do it. We don't need you to lift a 50-pound dumbbell on day 1, but as long as you're scaling and working in gradually, no, it won't hurt you. In terms of bulking up, if you are doing true cardio, chances are your body's actually breaking down a fair amount of muscle. So it's not that likely that you're going to bulk up because your cardiovascular components of your training are actually breaking you down. So if anything, it's just going to keep muscle on your frame.
Yeah, I actually just read a quote before this. I've never seen a weak, fast runner.
Truth.
So just thinking about that, I was like, yeah, that's true. You've never seen somebody who is a fast runner who is setting their PRs who is weak. So strength training has to be a part of that. And I think that bulking up part is definitely what I hear mostly.
Yeah.
And I think I hear it from people of all genders that we often hear women say they don't want to bulk up, but I've heard all people say that they don't want to put on too much muscle because they think it'll slow them down.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. We know that being strong, you have to be strong and resilient to maintain that single leg effort that running takes. And strength training is literally the only way to achieve that.
Yeah, I always give examples of the Nike Wind Runners, right? Our sub-elite development team that we run here out of Edge and is powered by Nike. We've had an athlete that has gone into the trials 5 pounds heavier. And she had lifted and she's like, I don't know how this is going to go. I've never, looked like this and felt like this. And she PR'd by a significant chunk. And then, more currently, we have Brittany Romero, who is very diligent. I wouldn't say that her composition even changes much in or out of season. She kind of carries a lot of muscle because she strength trains a couple times a week. And she just, annihilated her half marathon PR at Brooklyn, which is an incredibly difficult course. And she attributes all of that ability to PR, increase volume, not only that, but really kind of most importantly is avoid injury, to her kind of sustained ability to strength train. Again, she's not ramping it up necessarily. It's just consistent training.
Yeah, so that's an interesting example because your wind runners are elite athletes and, they have a schedule that I assume has a lot of mileage in it and they're probably running more than what I would guess your average everyday runner might be doing. So let's talk about duration and frequency of strength training. Now, and let's talk from like every person perspective, not our elites, right?
Yep.
So when or how often and how long should we be strength training?
Really, something is always more than nothing, right? So don't get so caught up. I think people get hesitant. They're like, I don't know what to do for a whole hour at the gym. It's like, we're not telling you to do a whole hour at the gym. That would be overkill. Yeah. So just 20 to 30 minutes, 45 would be extra credit, A+ gold star, or green star if you're here at Edge. But really that 20 to 30 minute mark is going to give you a lot of what you need. It doesn't need to be super long or complicated. What about frequency?
Yeah, frequency, I would say probably 1 to 2 times a week. You said, one as a minimum, you have to be doing strength training, period. But 2 times a week, we saw the improvement that happens with 2 times a week. 3 times a week can happen if you're doing core exercises, which everybody should be doing core work in their training. Core, whether you are a cyclist, a runner, playing tennis, swimming, doing whatever, you need to have a strong and stable core. But I would say, it depends on the duration. We don't want to do 4 days a week of 45 minutes. If your prime focus is running or is endurance, think of the strength training as support for that, as a foundation for that, but it shouldn't be taking over your run time. So,
Yep.
You agree with that?
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
We need it to be present. We don't need it to be the only thing, although 99% of the time, everyone listening to this episode is probably going to be erring on the other side of that spectrum, which is doing 0 to 1. Just yesterday, I was with 2 athletes. One is 35 and one is 51. And one plays soccer and the other one plays tennis. And they were talking about just, how they were feeling. And I grilled them. I was like, what are you doing for strength training? And it was nothing for both of them. And I was like, if you want to level up and have your ankle stop hurting, I got the solution. It's not more tennis.
Yeah. Well, this is a great point because you mentioned age, and I think that's also a really important thing. We can get away with a lot of stuff when we are younger.
Yep.
We get away with not stretching, with not doing foam rolling and recovery. We get away with not strength training when we're younger. But as we get older, we start to lose muscle mass, which we're fighting. So then we're fighting against that and also are more prone to injuries for that reason. So it's really important that as we age, we really pay attention to that strength training work.
Yeah, and it really is after 30. So if you're not on that side of 30, then your job is effectively to put on muscle so that when you reach that, you have a better pool to draw from. And then if you're past that, your job is to gradually increase that muscle mass rate so that as you do kind of degrade over time, which we all know is going to just happen, it's science, you will again have a better pool to draw from. I know that here at Edge, we have scales that give you body comp. Those are really incredible tools as long as you're using them when you're in a hydrated and not totally fatigued state, to be able to just to take those data points of where you're at from a muscle mass composition so that you can monitor it, because most people just don't know. And I'm telling you right now that closing your eyes and shaking your head is not going to help when it comes to actually putting on muscle.
So I think the biggest concern that people have then, if they're committed to doing strength work, they just don't know where to put it in their schedule.
That is very common, because especially our triathletes, right? Because they're already doing 3 sports. So then they're like, I don't have time for a 4th sport. But it's like, okay, let's just figure out where we can put it in that it's going to match your current training. You're going to want to really schedule around your intense days. So I know back to the Windrunners a couple years ago, we were using this periodization and we recognized it pretty quickly and changed it. But it was Tuesday intensity run, Wednesday lift, and they lift a little heavier than our everyday athlete, and then Thursday intensity again. They were trashed. On Thursday morning practice, it was a complete just degradation of power and speed. So we then flipped it to be actually on their second intensity day after the run. And by doing that, gave them a true easy run or cross-training day on Wednesday and really started to see some pretty big improvements.
Yeah, so running before strength is a key. If you're going to double up on a day, do your running first, and then it's best if you have a gap in between that time. There have been studies that have shown that exactly what you just said, that if you are doing strength training, and particularly lower body strength training, before you do a run, even an easy run, but definitely an intense run, the fatigue carryover to the next day is exponentially higher. And that when you accumulate that fatigue and don't allow yourself to recover, that's where we start to run into those injuries a couple of days or a couple of weeks down the road. So really important to do that. But for our everyday average runner who has, maybe they're running 3 or 4 times a week, they're going to have those days that they aren't running. And it's important to schedule your strength around those intensity sessions, knowing that if you lift your legs, and particularly if you're lifting a little bit heavier, you're going to feel fatigued the next day. So maybe have an easy run the next day.
One note about running first, though, is I probably wouldn't put strength after a super long run. Like if your long run is still like an hour and a half or less, then you could probably do that. But as you increase, especially in like the back half of an 18-week marathon cycle, that would be one place where I wouldn't put strength is on the same day, or definitely not after on same day. Your body is already trying to repair. You've most likely done an increased amount of mileage. We don't need to add insult to injury and make it work even harder, because that just means the recovery from the run and the strength is going to be super long and you're going to be garbage the next week.
Yeah, this is what marathon training is all about, right? Or triathlon training is finding that balance of where it's a puzzle. Yeah. All of this is a puzzle, and there may be weeks where you have more intense sessions, but then we have our cutback weeks as well.
Yeah.
So should we be strength training on those recovery weeks?
Yes.
Yes, it might look a little different. So your sessions might be a little less intense, and body weight exercises are amazing, or they might be more intense, and that's your intensity for the week is more strength focused. It really depends on the full layout of your schedule, but you definitely should maintain that strength training during those down weeks as well.
And to Coach Chris's point, right, it might look different, but also making sure that it happens. Maybe, instead of jump squats, you're doing just air squats, right? Or using more bands than weights. Same thing holds true as well for taper weeks. Like as we cut back, we also need to cut back a little bit of the intensity of our lift. And I know that we have like a specific race week strength that we do that's mainly dynamic priming movements, but it's still keeping your body moving. We're just not necessarily breaking it down quite as much. Here's my quick tip too.
Okay.
This is where I find tiling really interesting. Working out is hard. Like you have to shower, you have to pack, you have to work out, then you have to shower and get ready. If I can pack my run before my strength and do it in one fell swoop, I then save myself a shower. And so then it just becomes a 30-minute extension of my run versus having to shower. That will then be my second or my third shower of the day, right? And I'm actually saving time in that sense. So as you stack those sessions, think about where you can save time in your day. I used to run when I had a corporate job. I used to run to the gym and lift at the gym, shower, and go to work. And then I saved not only on one shower, but I also saved on my commute.
Yeah.
So think about where you can fit it in creatively.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you have to be careful of what that exercise actually is then, because you are in a fatigue state.
Yep.
So it's not like you're doing max deadlifts on that session that you're stacking. But I often program for my athletes a short 10-minute strength session after their runs, after some of their easy runs particularly, of body weight exercises, because I know that their workout isn't over until that 10 minutes is done. And they're guaranteed to get it done because they're already in their workout clothes.
They're already a mess.
They're already a mess. They're going to get it done.
All right, so let's talk briefly about types of exercises, because this is the one that we get a lot of questions on. I will tell you that generally speaking, personally, I always like my athletes, and I like personally to go to a class, because like the ones here at Edge, we know that they're going to be balanced. They're going to have endurance athletes in mind. They're not necessarily going to shred your legs. It depends on where you go to work out, but there are absolutely facilities that give people, you know, really, really, really hard workouts and high heart rate workouts, because maybe those people aren't training for a marathon. Those might not be the best thing for you to do during your marathon training cycle, because you're not trying to squish all your workouts into one 45-minute session. You're trying to do a supplemental, intentional workout.
So you should focus on lifting. That's really the key, is focus on lifting, whether it's body weight or heavier weights. We're focused on the strength movements, not on getting that heart rate high, like you said. And that's really important to remember, because there are so many classes that are HIIT-based or cardio-based.
And they're great. Those are good classes.
And they are awesome classes, but as we increase our marathon training, they don't necessarily fit into our end goals.
Yeah, we have enough cardio going on with an endurance training plan. The box is checked. Again, you're not needing to fit that into a strength exercise or a strength regimen. You would do better doing just lifting. Yeah.
So types of exercises, total body and core are key, as well as legs. Obviously, leg day is really important, and single leg movements. Now, you have a class that you designed that is single leg day.
Yeah,
right?
the whole class is single leg. You would think it's interesting. It is hard. There's a lot of balance. We test the balance in the beginning, and we test it again at the end, and people always improve by the end because they're fired up, right? Their proprioception, their foot's ability to send channels up their leg has increased. But what they also note is a lot of times they're like, wow, my core is really sore and my arms are really sore, right? Because when you're doing something like a single leg mountain climber, you are just using one leg, but you're recruiting other parts of your body more, which is helping support that one appendage that we're used to functioning on two, which is also incredibly important when we're talking about running, because how many legs do we run on at any given point? One. Which means that training periodically for single leg is incredibly helpful. It shouldn't be all of your training, but we should be able to isolate and use them, and most importantly, improve on how we do so. So for reference, we just do that once a month.
Yeah. And you don't want to do legs all the time. I know that might be, a draw for people to say, well, if I have strong legs, I'll be a stronger runner or a stronger cyclist. But also think about all of the other parts of your body. You have to maintain good posture. So being able to have strength in your back, up through your neck, to hold yourself upright. Core work, again, so incredibly important. Arm work, you do swing your arms, you need to be able to maintain that.
Yep.
I mean, it is a total body movement to do running while you are landing on a single leg. So we have to think about that full picture. And, there are different ways to do this. Like you said, you prefer your athletes go into class because we know it's total body, or it's maybe 3 body part specific, but leans total body. There are people who periodize their training,
yes.
right? So they'll have like arms and chest day, or back and legs, back and tricep day. I clearly don't do this type of training, but I think that you have to keep in mind the bigger picture of your training schedule. If you choose to do that, just focus and make sure that it is balanced. My preference would be to do the total body and the core work. And again, it doesn't have to be long. So we're looking at those either 10-minute short after sessions. Core work can be 10 to 15 minutes and be very, very effective if it is a specific core class. Hips and glutes, like we should be looking at the total body and making sure that we're hitting it all throughout the week.
Yeah. And again, use probably smaller chunks if you're working it into what is already a time-consuming training plan. All right. So strength training. How do you do it? Why do you do it? So the why is going to be because there's a gap between what your heart and your lungs can do and what your body can do. And we want to close that gap to make you a faster, fitter version of yourself but also because it's going to make you less prone to injury.
And how long should you do it? 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes is bonus. How many times a week? Let's set the bar here. 2 times a week minimum for our athletes, strength training in a training endurance cycle right now.
What days? We always want to schedule those around your intensity days. So making sure that if they are paired with intensity, your run is happening first, but otherwise giving yourself that full 48 hours after hard swim, bike runs to be able to lift effectively.
And types of exercises, focus on that total body, focus on core, and focus on lifting, not on high heart rate exercise.
And finally, recovery and taper weeks. Do we strength train?
Yes, we do.
It might look a little bit different. It might be a little bit less heavy lifting, but it's going to happen and help prime you to do more work.
All right, that is our episode of Coach Quip. We want to see your strength workouts. Make sure that you tag us in your posts, and
something is more than nothing. You got this!
You've got this. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Coach Quip. Original music performed by Mend. Follow us online on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Edge Athlete Lounge. Our podcast lives in the blog section of our website. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, and you can check out the show notes for additional ways to contact us. Ready, set, onward we go.